Right, here we go. Do I need to do a screen test or anything, or is everybody happy with the way things are at the moment? Okay, what we're going to look at then is, that's a great start on camera, isn't it? Right, what we're going to do then, the first thing we're going to look at is how the internet works and what the web medium is all about and how it differs from designing for, say, paper or for printed matter, because there is a vast difference. They're both design-based sort of disciplines, but they're totally different. So we're going to examine first of all how they differ. Somebody tell me what this is. Very simple question. I don't mean what's on it. I mean, what is this? It's some more specific. It's an A4 sheet of paper. Okay. If I'm working in graphic design or some kind of printed matter production, I know that this piece of A4 paper is 297 millimeters that way, and it's 210 millimeters that way. And it doesn't matter whether I go to France, Spain, Germany, Italy, Slovenia, Slovakia, anywhere in the world, if it's an A4 sheet of paper, it will always be 297 by 210. Obviously, there are other sizes. There are US paper sizes, and some countries have their own sort of specific ones that they've based on either A4 or whatever. But it doesn't matter where I go, that piece of paper, if it says it's A4, will always be that same size. If it was double this size, in other words, 420 millimeters by 297, it would no longer be A4. What would it be? What's double A4 size?
A3.
A3. And what's double A3 size? A2. What's double A2 size? A1. And that's how this numbering system works. So if I divide that in half, I've got two pieces of A5. And if I divide those in half, I've got four pieces of A6. And that's the way that particular system works. And it doesn't matter where we go in the world, A4 is A4, and that's it. Because that is the case, it also means that it doesn't matter where I print this document. If I print it there, in another room, in another town, in another country, it doesn't matter. It's always going to look like this. And that's one of the great things about, one of the sort of stable things about graphic design is you're always working in the same medium. I know in advance that I'm going to be able to print, whatever I design in Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever, if I've designated it as A4, I know it will print. And I know that it will print the same on pretty much any device. Obviously, I'm not saying that graphic design is dead easy and it's dead simple. It isn't, because there are so many variables in graphic design. The type of paper, the type of printer, because of the colours it uses. How do we get accurate colour reproduction? How do we ensure that what we see on the screen is what comes out of the printer? There are lots of technology around it and lots of things that you have to sort out before graphic design is perfect. I'm not trying to say that graphic design is easy. One thing I'm trying to say is that with graphic design, what you see is what you get. That is A4. And I know it's A4, I know exactly what size it is, and I know how I'm going to deal with it. I will make my design fit within an A4 sheet. You've got a number of known things there. Okay, so everybody happy with that? That how paper works and the fact that we have standards there, we have standard sizes, which makes it easy for us in that respect. My question then, how big is a web page? Essentially, yes, that is the answer. So, how big is a web page?
As big as you make it.
Yeah? Yeah. Why? Why is that the case? Why can we not say a web page is 44 centimetres wide and 23 deep? Why can we not say that is the case?
So you do it on different sizes?
Yeah, because it depends what we look at it on, and it depends how we build it. It depends on a lot of things. It depends how we use the browser, and that's one of the problems. Because at the moment, that web page runs from there to there on this screen, but no, it doesn't. The web page hasn't actually changed size, but the browser has, the aperture. Essentially, a web page is as big as the device you're using to view it. So when we're looking at the sort of, I mean, obviously in the early days of the web, the only thing we could view a web page on was a browser. There were no mobiles, no tablets or nothing else. All you've got was a web browser. Does anybody know the name of the first sort of commercial web browser?
Netscape?
Yes, Netscape Navigator. Has everybody got notepads here and that? Can we write all this stuff down? So yeah, the first commercial web browser was Netscape Navigator, built by the company Netscape. The reason I'm asking you to write this kind of stuff down is because when you come to be doing your distinction criteria and things like that, you will need to give historical context to some of your answers. So if you can think about how the web developed, that will be some good content to put in some of those answers. So yes, the first commercial browser then. The way a web page loads in, so where does the web page actually run from? Let me just bring up a different one that's a little more illustrative. This is a very simple, everyday sort of commercial site. Okay, the actual content that we're interested in starts there and finishes there. So it just runs down those two sides. And this is what you call a fixed width site, this one. So it's just very simple, all based on the same template, every page. So the content we want runs from there to there. So where does that web page actually start? So does it start there and then there? Is that the actual page? No. No, it isn't. That is what we call the content area. The actual page starts there on the edge of the browser and runs right to there. And if the browser was another 10 times wider, that page would still continue. The page is as wide as the aperture of the device you're viewing it on. So essentially we've got no control over the size of a web page at all. So the only way we can control how a site views in a browser is to use some kind of structure in the middle of it, like this one. And we can have two different types of structure. There are fixed width websites like this one. So it doesn't matter how wide this page gets, this is always just going to sit straight in the middle of the screen. So if this is, I mean, the screen resolution I've got here, which we'll talk about screen resolution in a minute, is 1024 pixels wide. So I'm currently viewing this on 1024 by 768. In other words, if I was on full screen, I would have 1024 pixels that way, 768 pixels that way. What's a pixel? Somebody tell me what a pixel is. Somebody give me a definitive definition of what a pixel is. Right, okay. I'm sure you'll all know it anyway. If our screen is 1024 by 768, it means I've got 1024 dots of colour going that way, 768 dots of colour going that way. And each of those dots will be a different colour. And that's what makes up the image on the screen. So, if you we'll have a look at this in Photoshop at a later stage, we'll blow an image right up into about 5,000 zoom and you'll be able to see each individual pixel. So that's what any screen, no matter what type of screen it is you're looking at, is built up of pixels. So whatever website we're going to view, if I say that I want that website to be, say, 800 pixels across, I've got 1024 pixels of actual viewing space there. So I either want my website to fit on the left-hand side and in which case I'm going to get a load of blank stuff there. Or I can make it come to the middle and I have some blank stuff there and some blank stuff there, as in this case, because this one's sat in the middle of the screen. Or that's called a fixed width site. So you can have fixed width, which means we constrain it to a certain width and don't allow it to go any bigger or smaller regardless of what it's viewed on. Or we can have variable width ones, or liquid. So you can have fixed width sites, or you can have liquid layouts. A liquid layout means that when the browser gets wider, the site also gets wider. And if the browser gets narrower, the site gets narrower. But that, of course, affects what's within that structure. Because if I bring this really narrow, this text, which is currently on 5 lines, will go on to about, say, 10 lines if I make the browser really narrower, because that's what a liquid site is. It means everything can sort of move and rearrange itself. And the longer the shorter each of these paragraphs, the longer the page gets. So we have to put some provision in place to allow the page to lengthen. So you have to make these kind of decisions of whether you're going to use liquid layout, fixed layout, or whatever you're going to do when you start to design the pages. It's not just sort of finding out afterwards you've got a problem. You need to think about this in advance about what you're going to do. It's also more vital these days to think that through because of the fact that we're not viewing websites now just on a web browser or not on a PC with its standard resolutions of 1024 and everything else. We're now viewing websites on these, we're viewing them on tablets, we're viewing them on all sorts of things. This site would not render on a smartphone properly. It will, you can still see the whole site, but you're scrolling horizontally because only half the site fits on the screen, especially if it's in the sort of portrait mode of it. If you turn it around onto landscape, it looks better, but because this is a fixed width site, the number of pixels I've got to display that site, this is too big for it. So we have to scroll horizontally, and I've got to be honest with you, if anybody makes me scroll horizontally, I leave. I can't stand it. I hate horizontal scrolling. I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't mind obviously vertical scrolling where you've got a long page, but if somebody makes me go side to side so I can view the whole site, I leave. I hate it. So it's just one of my pet hates about using the internet. So we have to make these sort of decisions before we go any further. We will come on to that later, but what I really want to talk about is this screen resolution issue and how we get over that. The main way of thinking about screen resolution, in fact, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to ask you to research this over the next week. I want to find out what are the sort of standard, in fact, write this question down, so I want you to research this for me. I may give you some time to do this afternoon. Because it's not vital to go through this today, I want to know what, these days, when you're talking about modern laptops, modern desktop machines, what kind of screen resolutions are common on those machines at the moment? Then have a look at tablets. So you're talking Apple iPads and the Samsung tablets. What kind of screen resolutions are common to those machines or those devices? And then I'd like you to look at smartphones as well. What screen resolutions do smartphones work on? And remember, obviously, when we're talking smartphones and tablets, you're talking 2 modes because you can rotate them, so you can alter the orientation from portrait to landscape. So we can feed back to me on this because we're going to be going through this in detail next week. So you can feed back to me next week on this. So you can, sometime over the next few days, just have a look at that for me, and then you'll all be sort of coming back to me with some good info. Right. So we've established, first of all, that the kind of websites we build can be viewed on a number of different devices. They can be viewed on standard internet browsers. They can be viewed on the kind of browser that you have on your smartphone, which again is still classed as a standard browser, but obviously a different version of it to run on mobiles. And we've got to design our pages accordingly. The way that's done these days, and the way it's done in industry at the moment, is to use what we call, and we're not going to go into detail on this at the moment, it's called responsive web technique. This is the way web design agencies work today. And what that means is that when you establish a connection with the server that's hosting this website, as the page starts to download, it determines what device it's being downloaded onto. So if it's being downloaded onto a smartphone, it renders out one way. If it's being downloaded onto a PC, it renders out a different way. In other words, the website responds to the device it's being downloaded to. That's why it's called responsive web. And we'll be looking at what techniques we can use to build responsive web a bit later on. Not today, but a bit later on in the course. Because it is what's being used in industry at the moment. But it's quite complex, so we need some background before we can look at how it all works. What I'm going to concentrate for the rest of this session is how the internet generally works. Right, so if you decide that you're going to sort of spend a while on the internet, looking something up, researching something, so you open up your PC or your laptop or whatever it is you're going to use to view it, how do you retrieve the website that you want to view? So let's just say you want to have a look at holidays in Spain. I wish. So, if you wanted to find a holiday in Spain, where would you start on the internet? Where would you? Right, search engine then. That's generally what most people use. And what would happen when you? So, what search term would you use? Just holidays in Spain, or Spanish holidays, or if you were more specific, you wanted to go to a certain part of Spain, you would put holiday in, I don't know. Costa del Sol or Costa Brava or whatever, or holiday in Barcelona. You could use whatever search term you wanted. What would then happen on Google? Yeah, it will produce a list of results for you. And what would happen then? You'd click on one of those results, and then a web page would manifest itself in your browser. Hopefully, something to do with what you'd actually searched for. Okay. Where did that web page come from? A web page is a sort of not a physical thing, it's a digital thing, but a web page is an object that it's not in your house. It's not. Where did that web page come from? Because sorry, a server. Yeah. So somewhere. Out on the internet is a server which hosts, let's just say that the website that's on this server is www.spanishvax.es, because it's a Spanish domain. Right, that website is on that server, it's hosted on that server. But you're at home on your PC. How does your PC know that that server is, that website is hosted on that server?
Because your computer is connected to the internet.
Yes, because your computer is connected to the internet. So, first thing we need to examine, how do we connect to the internet? Router, did you say? Yeah, most people. So let's have you have to buy a subscription somewhere in order to be able to get an internet connection. You know, you can't just sort of walk in anywhere and get a connection. Generally, you know, if you're at home, for instance, you need a provider, somebody who can give you an internet connection. So name some providers for me.
Skype.
What do we call these providers?
ISP.
ISPs. internet service providers. So, Sky, Virgin, BT,
TalkTalk.
TalkTalk. Did you say PlusNet? Yeah. PlusNet, broadband from Yorkshire. Anybody got any others? Orange. Any others? Sue? AOL, did somebody say? Did you say AOL? AOL. That's how I started with in 1996, in the old days.
3.
When broadband was, when internet access was steam powered, that was AOL. Is it still used? Is it still in use, AOL?
Yeah.
Yeah? I can say I abandoned it about 2000, but... Right, so we've got these people called ISPs, Internet Service Providers. And when we want to go on the internet, actually, no, we'll do it on the stage first. How do we connect from our PC to our ISP? How do we actually connect in? You said router. Has everybody got a router? Yeah? There are different kinds of router, because there are different kinds of network that the different ISPs use. So if somebody's on Virgin, they're more than likely going to have a totally different way of connecting to the internet than somebody who's on TalkTalk, PlusNet, Orange, or AOL. And we need to establish that. So what kinds of connection are there? I mean, let me just tell you about the old days first of all. If you wanted to get on the internet when the internet first came around, you needed a telephone line, standard telephone line, and what you call a dial-up connection. So your PC, laptop or whatever had to have a dial-up modem installed, which then enables you to establish a dial-up connection to your ISP. So that's the old method, dial-up. Dial-up is still used, but very much in sort of minimum. So what other types of connection are there? Because yes, everybody uses a router, but there are different types of router which connect us into the internet.
ADSL?
ADSL, who said that? Right. ADSL. That's one of the types of connection. It still requires a phone line. Only what ADSL does, a standard phone line can carry can only connect at nominal 56 kilobits a second. ISDN, sorry, no, stop it. ADSL is a much faster way of connecting. And essentially it has two streams, an upstream and a downstream. There are actually two types of ADSL when we think about it. If we call it DSL to start with, what does DSL stand for? Remember to write all this down because we are going to be asking you, in your first assignment is all about internet connection and how we're enabled for connection and how the internet works. There is a handout about this as well on Interact called How the Internet Works, and I suggest that's some reading material for you. Yeah, so what does DSL stand for? It stands for Digital Subscriber Line. So in other words, you have to be a subscriber to actually use it. It has to be assigned to you. So if we know that DSL means Digital Subscriber Line, what does ADSL mean?
Advanced Digital Subscriber Line?
Sorry?
Advanced Digital Subscriber.
I've given a bit of a clue, but it's probably not a sufficient clue. What I said was we've got an upstream and a downstream. It's asymmetrical, so asymmetrical digital subscriber line, because in most cases you can download stuff. In other words, your download speed is far faster than your upload speed. Because in normal circumstances, you don't need to be uploading stuff. Obviously, you probably dispute that if you're a big peer-to-peer network user, like using torrents or anything like that, because of course you can be a seed and uploading stuff and downloading stuff. So that's often why, if you are using torrent sites, it takes you ages to download stuff, because people haven't got very fast upload speeds. And of course, with peer-to-peer, you're connecting direct to their machine effectively. So DSL is another way of, so these are our different ways of connecting. Standard dial-up, DSL. What's the third one? What might Virgin users use?
Fibre optic?
Yes, fibre. So these are all different ways of connecting to the internet, all effectively the same. So they all enable us to connect to our ISP. In the case of, how does it, when I said that you needed a modem to connect via dial-up, what do you need to connect via ADSL? Because despite the fact you've got a router, the router has a component which connects to the net. The router itself is performing a different purpose altogether. So what actually establishes the connection between the PC and the internet connect and the ISP on an ADSL connection? It's a bit of a cheat, really. It's just an ADSL modem. It is a modem, but it's a more advanced modem, capable of establishing faster connections, faster speeds, and you're still using your standard telephone line, but the fact it's digital subscriber enables far more function within it to enable much faster upload and download. So what do we use to connect via fibre to our ISP? Might still be a router, but it's got a different connection component built into it. Or like in my case, for instance, I don't actually have, or I didn't actually have a router given to me by Virgin. I had something else given to me, which I then connected my own router into it. So what is it that enables you to establish via fibre? What's another name for fibre, for a fibre connection? Some people don't refer to it as fibre optic broadband, they refer to it as something else. Has anybody heard the term cable? Anybody heard the term cable? So you talk about cable broadband. Well, all we use to establish a connection via Virgin is a cable modem. Because it runs, it's a different way of connecting. And whereas standard modems use things called IP addressing as their main identifier, fibre and cable use MAC addressing as well. But we'll talk about this again later. So that's the different ways we use to connect to our ISP.